We review Catspaw up next. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and today Catspaw is a story that I'm not really all that fond of when it comes to the second season, which I believe is probably the best season of the original series. Still, there are a couple of clinkers here and there, and Catspaw was an attempt to do a Halloween story. So we have everything that we need here, a castle, dust, skeletons, 3 witches, cobwebs, a dungeon, a black cat, fog, and all that based on a pair of aliens who can only read certain parts of human minds and figured that was something that was normal rather than something that came out of a number of Universal B movies during the 40s. And I can see where they like doing that because they probably had all the sets that were built for who knows what, and they could just put it all together. There were very few special effects. The cat was just, shot against a light and looked big. And then they had some miniatures built out of styrofoam probably for the cat to walk through. So you see a direct shot of the cat looking big rather than just a shadow. You have just plain old lock the camera and remove the characters kind of thing. You have, except for the transporter effect, I don't know that they used any special effects at all. Not a phaser was shot. Some sound effects and very, very simple optical things and some practical stuff like, a smoke machine and things like that. So as far as production of it, this had to be a very economical show to make. I don't care much for the writing of it, honestly. There are a few little interesting things of DeSalle, who is the assistant chief engineer. I think this is the only place that he was ever actually identified as that, who takes command of the Enterprise when Sulu and Scotty and Spock are all on the surface. And that's another thing that got me about this episode. This was supposed to be a routine survey team. It was a planet that they thought was completely uninhabited. So who do they send down? They send down the chief engineer, they send down Sulu, and then they send down Jackson, who hasn't been heard of before, interestingly wearing a green shirt, and he dies being beamed back up. Something to be said about this. We've most people don't realize that, unless you've read a lot about it, that the original series Command Division shirts were green. They were a lime green, which in a velour fabric that they used did not reflect the light well and did not look all that green. And in fact, a lot of the reruns, which is where most people saw these shows to begin with, were sent to local stations on faded film stock and inaccurate color adjustments on their transmitters caused them to look gold or almost yellow. And in fact, it is so overwhelming that in subsequent series, they just went ahead and made them gold or yellow and didn't even worry about trying to make a subtle green. Now, in the original NBC episodes, it was possible, and in the remastering of these, you can see that the shirts are kind of green, but they really don't go across very well. No doubt these uniforms are made because they could make them cheaply out of the velour. It looked somewhat futuristic without just looking like pajamas. And I think that's what brought them to that. But they really did not consider their colors very well on this. The blue and the reds came out perfectly, but the green just didn't do it. They could have done most any other color, and in the time, the NTSC color might have registered another color better than they did the green. But that's nitpicking, really. So we have all of these settings for a cheap Universal B movie, and so we have the three witches, kind of Shakespearean, and we have they're having the warbling sound. Don't come here. I mean, this stuff that you would have done at Halloween, and while it's even recognized by the characters, Spock says very bad poetry when Kirk asked him first for analysis of the three witches. I think that almost was a comment on the writing more than it was being in character. How they get out of it, which is the way they always get out of it, is Kirk romances whatever the female is. And this female is getting used to the whole idea of being human and doesn't understand how the feelings work. And all she needs is a few open mouth kisses from the captain. And suddenly she's giving away a whole lot more information than she intended to, and is giving them what they need now in order to get out of all of this. Plus the fact that the male alien is kind of jealous and kind of wants to get rid of him so he can have her for himself, or has some kind of realization of morality that didn't heretofore exist. Why they'd even come into this galaxy beforehand, we never know what they really needed to know or why, and it really kind of was weak. All in all, in writing, they do as well as they can. The acting's okay, but I mean, they could have put different characters than this and put it in any show practically, and didn't have to be Star Trek. Tell me about power, Captain. How does it feel right before the romance begins, please? The only thing that I found redeeming about this was on the Enterprise itself. Dussal shows himself to be a very good commander. I was distracted a bit by Chekhov's wig. Apparently, they had two of them and put them both on at the same time. This was not normal even for Chekhov, who was always balding, and they put him in this beetle haircut kind of toupee that never looked quite right, but in this episode especially looked like they had put a beehive on him. One good line from Chekhov when Dussal is asking him to check his instruments, he says, "I'm not that green," which I thought was a in-character comment. Sometimes I wish that every time that they're told to do something, that they're as if they don't know what their job is. I don't know what's going on. Did you try looking out the window? It's the same as my computer's not working. Well, is it plugged in? Things like this I find insulting, and they do it all the time, and not just in this show, but in every science fiction. Oh, did you scan for life forms? Damn, I forgot to scan for life forms. Who thought? Please. We notice once again, one of the few times that Kirk refers to McCoy and speaks to him as Doc rather than Bones. Perhaps just because there was a skeleton also hanging in the dungeon with them, perhaps he didn't want to get them confused. Spock calls the captain Jim on more occasions during this than normal. I don't see a problem with that. I think that you're going to find in close working, even military crew, if they're in a formal situation, they'll call themselves by the rank. But, what's wrong with calling them by their names otherwise, even Spock? That might be appropriate more often than is used, and here it does. And so those are the good things that I can find out. One other little thing, Mr. Kyle, who is the transporter chief, is there, but in the credits only listed as transporter chief. They didn't actually give him the name that time, but he was the guy that whenever they did decide to name him, he would be Kyle. So all of this in Catspaw, I don't recommend it. I don't think it's the best Star Trek episode that ever was. It doesn't really stink. I mean, it's not like Spock's brain, but it only kind of skirts along the idea of even a Star Trek episode, and they only kind of pull that together in the end. And when you have, first of all, an unimportant planet, which you send out 3 of your officers, none of which are specialists particularly in what they were gone down to do, and then when they turn up missing for for no reason. Let's take the rest of the command crew and the ship surgeon down there too. It makes no sense at all, except for, using the main actors. I mean, they might as well just beam the whole bridge down and then, bring in guest stars to run the ship while they're on the planet trying to, figure out what's going on. It doesn't make any sense. The other thing that bothers me all the time, too, is when the communicators go out. They don't get down to the surface and the communicators don't work. No, they work just long enough to know that they've gone out. Oh, there's something really dangerous down there. Oh, what happened? And then, he gives back time and time again when he knows there's no way that he's going to be able to get contact. So I find little things like that kind of bothersome. All that said, we have episodes coming up that are better than this, so we recommend that you stick with us, and we'll have another video next week on whatever comes next in order in this series. We're thinking about doing some retro reviews on Deep Space Nine. I have not seen much of that in a long time, and I'm kind of curious as to how knowing more about the show and going in to see it again, just what it would be like. I mean, we've seen The Next Generation time and time again. I don't know there's been a whole lot of rewatches of Deep Space Nine, so we're thinking about doing that. So tell me what you think about that when you make your comments below, and I recommend that you do. Also, if you've not subscribed, please do so, and click the like button if you like us. I hope you do. And we will keep you up to date. Coming up, of course, next month we will be covering Strange New Worlds. So until then, thank you for watching, and don't go far.